So we're starting off our afternoon panel with, as you can see, the network challenges of implementing AI. We want to look at the challenges faced by telcos and their vendor partners, and we will discuss as much of this as we can. And of course, we want your feedback as well. We want your questions. But to start us off, let's introduce our three guests. So if I could ask our guests to briefly introduce themselves, starting on my far right.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Boasman-Patel. I'm the Vice President of Innovation at TM Forum. And before doing that, I set up the autonomous networks work at TM Forum. And great to see people still referencing the AN levels, which we've done for the industry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Bans. I'm Principal and co-founder of MULTIPLAI. And I'm super happy to be here today to share my perspectives and learnings with you.
And I'm Jeremy Chelot. I'm the CEO of a group of companies, including Netomnia, UFiber, and Brisk, and we deploy a new fiber network in the UK.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Rebecca, before we start, maybe I could start by just asking you to tell us a little bit more about the company, because it's probably a company that not a lot of our audience knows about.
We're a startup, and we're focusing on basically bridging the gap between all the promise of data and AI and the reality that we see today. So we do a lot of strategy work, but also architecture, so data and cloud architecture.
Great. Thanks very much. So lots of questions, I'm sure, coming Rebecca's way and for all our guests. But first of all, before we start the Q&A, we have offered our guests the opportunity for a 5-minute presentation, which they're all accepted, I'm pleased to say. So why don't we start in alphabetical order? Aaron, do you want to come up here and give your presentation? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. So before we talk about the challenges of AI in the network, I thought I'd do a quick 5 minutes on what is it we're trying to do and what is the role of AI, particularly as we start to get in the role of autonomous networks. So the whole idea of what we're trying to do is, as a part of this transformation, getting towards this zero weight, zero touch, zero trouble networks which are truly self-serving, self-fulfilling, and self-assuring. And this is not only about cost reduction. We talk a lot about efficiency improvements. That's really, really important. But what we have to start thinking about as well is around revenue growth and how we can really start to improve that experience. This is about going from what we call a techco capability now to really becoming an AI native telco. And this is so important to do, because this is all about delivering simplicity to the end users and thinking about what is it we can do as a service. And the network plays an incredibly important role to do that. And as we become more advanced and start to really delivering more and more digital services, which become really time critical, our networks have to really become this zero weight, zero touch, zero trouble as we do that, which will underpin everything as we see from smart cities, homes, governments, industries, etc. And that means we have to evolve now really towards the evolution of autonomous networks. And this is where I spent a lot of my career lately, looking at how we build truly autonomous networks end to end. And remember, this goes all the way from the customer layer, all the way down, right the way to the network and to the network elements. But we've got to do a lot of work to be able to get to that evolution of autonomous networks. We've heard a lot of operators talking about we wanting to be level 4 by 2025. Remember, level 4 is about having intent in your autonomous networks. It's about having AI in there, about telling the network what you want it to do, but fundamentally not how to do it. But in order to get to that stage, we have to think about open network industry, open APIs. Network APIs become so important, defining what those interfaces are, particularly on the operations and management side of the network. Today, a lot of those interfaces are still very vendor specific. We can't get into the network. We can't get the data out. And without that, we're not going to be able to add that end-to-end automation. We've got to look at this multi-SDO work, Tim, from we spend a lot of time working with the standards organizations as well to make sure that actually we have that end-to-end management of operations from the customer, again, all the way down to the network. And this, again, is also about that softwareization of the network, and really think networks do become softwares and what that standard and automation in that area starts to look like. We have to think about the compute and storage on demand as we start to look at that. What happens, closer at the edge? What happens, at the core? And then these self-healing domains really start to depend on this dynamic programmable IT and network functions. Absolutely critical to do this. And in order for all of this to happen, we then go through to that closed loop controls. And that becomes absolutely critical to deliver that. And that's what AI networks is all about. And we'll have more time, hopefully, in the discussion to talk about that as we go forward. So we know that the revolution is happening. We know we're starting to go towards autonomous networks. And at TM Forum, we're starting to develop the blueprint now for all of our members and for the industry to start to deploy that. And this is all about having the architecture of tomorrow. And what these key areas of focus needs to really be on, this is all about autonomy. We're probably a lot hearing now about agentic frameworks. They become really, really important so we can start to decide actually what is the hierarchy of that decision making that needs to take place and how that works in your network. It's all about intent, again, telling the network what you want it to do, but not how to do it. And that is an expression of intent, and that's incredibly hard to get right. And that's all the way from the customer all the way down to the network engineers who want to express what it is that they want to do across those closed loop controls. And you see that they have the business control loops, service control loops, resource control loops, all working across the production, commerce, and party layers. And to do that, we have to understand where we are in terms of our levels of automation. It was great to hear that earlier from Nokia talking about that. A lot of people think that they're more advanced in network automation than they really are. Our latest survey showed our levels of 1 to 5. Majority of operators are at 1.8 on their level of automation. That means they are not even doing multi-domain orchestration. They are still looking at automation within single domains. So the point is we have a lot to do. So hopefully that sets up the next part of the discussion. So rapid fire across those.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks so much, Aaron, and thanks so much for getting agentic in there as well. I'm determined to get agentic in every single session. It's the word of the year next year. Yes, it is, right. Okay, Rebecca, would you like to come up?
Perfect. Slides are already up. So I would like to start us off with one of my favorite quotes. AI is a lot like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it, but nobody really does it. And may I add to it, those that do are not particularly good at it. And I see some smiles, so maybe that's either your experience as a teen or now at the data and AI space. So within the next 5 minutes, I want to share a bit of my perspective of the past 7 years of consulting, of what I've seen, what the implementation challenges are. And I would like to give away a secret in the beginning. It has nothing to do with technology. So today we already heard a lot about the big, someone referenced to it as the nirvana, the promised land of use cases and all the value potential that it will bring. So this is what everyone talks about. And I think the telco industry is also quite prone to already be quite aware of some of the challenges, particularly in data and the technology space. So you might already be doing a lot of data platform work, since the data is core of your industry. So that is something where we don't need to start from zero, so we can bench off of that. Maybe you're already having established data as a strategic asset within your companies. Maybe you have a data marketplace, a data catalog. So we see a lot of not starting from zero here. And I heard a lot of people already talk a lot about data governance, data management today. So those are the known challenges that everyone knows. But like the Titanic, didn't sink because of the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot of challenges that actually matter, and they are lingering below the surface. So I've had a question in the audience, I heard it earlier, questioning where it is actually within an organization that data and AI should be taking place. And this comes back to the first layer I want to talk about, which is strategy and board level attention. Yes, I'm talking board level. That is where data and AI should be placed. This is the #1 differentiator that I've seen across projects. You might have also experienced the projects that have been deeply buried within IT, within business. Nobody really cares about it. You have trouble getting resources. You have trouble getting people to be motivated to participate in your projects. But what if the CEO really cares about the topic? Things move along, right? You get budget, the A team gets allocated, and things move along. And it's really about the board and the C-level having a clear vision of what it is that data and AI can do for your business. What does it mean to be data-driven and experience-led? And this goes hand in hand with having a clear vision and how that vision can come to life, right? So the use cases that are behind it. And this is the beauty and also the challenge when it comes to data and AI. Wherever there's data, you need to do something with AI. So how do you actually identify those use cases that serve the overall company vision and also address the objectives of where you want to go? So option one, look at your company strategy. What is it that you want to be moving along? And if data and AI can have an impact here, there was also a great chance that this is moving ahead and the ROI will be great. Second option, what are the biggest challenges that you have in your organization? Imagine if you're solving your CEO's biggest challenge. Wouldn't that be great? What would be the value, right? So yeah, that's the first piece. And next, when you have your great list of ideas of how that vision can come to life, one of the biggest challenges I see still in a lot of businesses, and it is very, very basic, is what is the actual challenge that you want to solve? I've seen so many projects start, and then we find out later that we're actually working on the effect of the problem and not the root cause. We've had a project that was actually started with a user in the US. It turns out the actual user was in India. And we actually were working on a completely different process than the one that we needed to be targeting. So the whole project needed to be stopped immediately and started from scratch. So yeah, that's a basic point, but not to be underestimated. Then, this is also going into the next point. Once you have identified your use cases, what happens? You have to identify what are the actual business requirements behind it. What data do I need? What technology do I need? Maybe I have new governance requirements that I have to take care of. We've heard about the EU AI Act earlier. Maybe we need to descope or rescope our use cases. And then what talent do I need to actually bring this to life? It's a great challenge for a lot of companies, not only in the telco space, but where do we get the talent from? And lastly, what do we need to do in terms of change? Because if we're just digitalizing a shitty non-digital process, you will just have a shitty digital process. And a lot of companies don't take advantage of the chance to actually reinvent a process in the process of building a new AI application. And that brings me to the last point, underneath the surface, which a lot of people always strike out of their balance sheet. It's known as change management, but I like to call it organizational readiness, because it's actually bringing it back to the point that it's really about. Getting your organization ready for what's to come. You can build the best and biggest large language model or a neural network and put it in front of my favorite user, Tanya from HR, who deletes the internet from time to time. She will not know what to do with it, right? And the other person, Peter, from our other department, who has been there for 30 years and will say, oh, I've always done it this way, why should I change? And we talked about this in one of the breaks. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is the one piece that gets underestimated the most and has the biggest impact. And I wanted to share, before I close this off, a little bit of what this actually translates to in the industry. So this is a study done by Accenture on the art of AI maturity. And what we're seeing here is where the overall market stands with regards to that. And what you're seeing is the one side, the AI differentiation. So the degree to which organizations have an idea of the strategy, of the vision, what it means to be data and AI led. And on the bottom, you have your AI foundation. So on the top, you have your people that maybe have a strategy. On the bottom, you have those who maybe built just a data platform and don't really know what to do with it. And then there's this big gap between the ones that are AI achievers and the ones that are still experimenting. And that's actually what the overall industry looks like. If we look at the telco industry, we see that there's a slight change in what we see in terms of leaders. And I think that goes back to the core business of telco being very much data-driven. And the good message here also is there's a huge divide still between those who are experimenting and those who are leading. So there is still a lot to do and a lot to achieve. And this is also why we founded MULTIPLAI, to bridge that gap. And I'm happy to share some more insights and also lessons learned in the next discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Rebecca. And Jeremy, would I come up to the lectern and take your place?
Okay.
I don't know if you know what an Altnet is, but so historically in the UK, there were two large incumbents of Openreach, BT and Virgin Media. And over the last decade, a new generation of operators appear in the UK called the Altnet. So I'm the CEO of Netomnia, Brisk and Fiber. We are now the second largest Altnet in the UK and the fourth largest network after BT, Virgin Media, and CityFibre. The company itself is organized with a structure which has one company called a NetCo, and that company is called Netomnia, which provide a wholesale network to two ISPs, one called Fiber and the other one called Brisk. You might ask why so many companies, because we just went through a merger when Brisk merged into Netomnia and Fiber, and this is why we've got three companies, which does create some challenges, especially for AI type of activities, because now I've got even more system and more data basically to have to pull basically in different locations. The network itself has about 2 million, we cover now 2 million premises. So it means that 2 million premises in the UK can order the service that Netomnia provide, and we are growing currently at about 100,000 premises a month. It's the second fastest build engine currently in the UK, just after Openreach. We have also 225,000 customers as of the end of last month, and we're adding about 18,000 customers a month. To put in perspective, 18,000 is higher than any ISP currently in the UK, including Vodafone. In terms of funding, over the last 4 years, we have raised about 1.3 billion pounds, and the goal is to deliver at least 3 million premises by the end of next year. And you can see the map, which is quite an interesting map for us, is we are also the only Altnet which is covering the 4 countries in the UK. So we are stretched from Derry in Northern Ireland to Folkestone or Dover in the southeast of England, going through the entire coast of Wales and quite a few places in Scotland. To put in perspective, in the last 5 years, we went from, as I say, being 4 years ago, we didn't exist. But just this year alone, by taking Netomnia, we used to be the 4th largest Altnet, and Brisk the 6th largest Altnet. Now we are the 2nd largest Altnet. And more importantly, we are kind of in a league of our own with the 4 scale player that you see there. So you might see 5 logos, but it's actually 4 because Virgin Media, O2, and Nexfibre are kind of a very similar company. Right after that, you've got 3 other companies called Community Fibre, Hyperoptic, and GigaClear that are a bit more than 500,000 premises for GigaClear, and Community Fibre and Hyperoptic are in the low 1 million. So there is really a big gap between the top range, the national scales, to the large in the middle, and then there is quite a significant amount of players which are in the 100,000 to 300,000 plus. So now let's talk about AI. So my background is actually I'm a software developer by trade, and but I'm also a network engineer, an IT guy. So I usually like computers. As I find them a lot easier to deal with than people, and I think I've got a lot of teenagers in my company. So the first problem that we have is really data chaos. It's when I look at since the mergers, now we've got so many systems. We've got several finance systems, several HR systems, several CRM, several ticketing systems, several of everything scattered across different type of architecture. Some of them self-built by us, some of them software as a service. So you've got basically that constellation of data, which is everywhere, that if you want to do anything with, you need to bring it somewhere. First of all, and we've started actually building some of that, and we've got now Databricks, a lake house actually with that we use Databricks for, and we pull actually all our data from all our systems. But one also of the problem as a telco is the regulatory part of what we do. we have a lot of customer data, and we've got a lot of data which is very sensitive. And as part of pooling that data and how you do it, you need to make sure that you don't leak actually a lot of that confidential data, because that's one of the key things that has plagued quite a few telco in the world is confidentiality and customer data basically leaked being in the wild. So we have to navigate quite a complicated. It's not that complicated, but it's just there's so many people involved and so many systems that it's very easy basically for you find a table somewhere or some data where you see hundreds of thousands of customer information somewhere, and you say, who's got access to that? And then you find out that everybody has the ability to download the damn thing. So it's you spend quite a lot of time looking at governance and so on. The other thing is, as any company, I think everybody is great at Excel. It's kind of the new, I call the new cancer of companies. So Excel for me used to be kind of bad. Now it's Power BI. So everybody in your company usually try to play with Power BI, and they think they're fantastic at data. And so therefore everybody thinks that they can do those things. And I think there is a clear gap in terms of knowledge of what you can do with it, how to do it, and why actually doing it. It's kind of sometimes it's just the why for, okay, it's AI, so we need to do it. And the last thing is really sometimes is the latency to actually get the data. So some of the data actually needs to be a real time, or it's time sensitive, especially when you try to optimize, for example, customer experience inside a property or anything, when you need actually a real feedback. And many systems actually are not actually built to extract actually telemetry in a way which is real time, which then adds basically latency in everything that you're doing. Good news is we don't have any legacy systems in my company because it's only 4 years old, so we did not have time to go through that. So we have a very good control of our system and the data structure, and which is if anything, we've got too much data actually. The problem is because we are going very fast, it goes everywhere, and then we spend more time actually reconciling the data than actually using the data. So what are our plans and what we are doing already currently? So we've developed, for example, an application internally that we call Voyager, which basically currently support basically all our customer service staff. And basically when people come and they start basically asking questions to the customer service team, the customer service team doesn't even read at the beginning the message. So the message is used by our application, which is called Voyager. Try to understand the sentiment of the question, try to start providing actually answers. We don't send them directly to the customers at that point, but as soon as the agent basically come and pick up the chat or anything like that, they've got an idea of what they could answer to actually speed up basically the response, potentially have access to already the knowledge article or anything like that to try to make it better. Ideally, at some point, the agent doesn't even answer, and we get basically Voyager to do it by itself. But that's step maybe 3 or 4. So right now we're trying to make sure we don't mess it up. We try to do a lot of Wi-Fi analytics to improve actually Wi-Fi in the home. This is where telemetry is quite difficult because actually extracting actually the data from CPs basically in the home is actually quite hard, and many of them is not real time. So it's quite difficult, but we play with that. We look, and in the future for us, some of the use cases that we've been looking is how do we predict basically a bit more churn or improve basically acquisition. But as it got mentioned there, sometimes it's almost like trying to use AI because you want to use AI, and you're almost trying to find a problem to a solution that you have. And in the company, sometimes it's I get into meetings where they say, okay, we need to use AI to do our churn basically management. So, but why? So yeah, it's going to help us. So I read that use case. It's going to be very good at predicting churn and reducing it and so on. And then I said, but 80% of our churns are people moving out of their properties. How is it going to help basically solving that 80%? People are just moving out. Nothing you can do. AI is not going to do anything for you in that situation. And I think that's some of the challenges that we see in the companies. Sometimes is AI for AI's sake. But yeah, that's it.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Thanks so much, everybody, for those insights there to get us going. Now, I'm sure you've got questions based on what you've just heard. I'm sure you do. So who's going to start us off? Dean, start us off, please.
Hi there. I'm going to repeat my question from before about wholesale retail, given we've just heard from Jeremy about open access fibre and vertical integration. And also I'm curious if TM Forum has got any views on the wholesale versus vertical integration side of AI and network automation, and also MULTIPLAI if you have thoughts on that.
So, your question earlier, for those who weren't here.
The question is, does AI essentially advantage integrated telcos because they can use data from the network to the customer, as opposed to wholesale versus retail splits where two different service providers only have half the data each and may not be able to glue it together?
Who'd like to start?
I'm happy to start. I think they do have an advantage when you're integrated. I mean, the challenge which you mentioned before is what on earth do you do with this data? So we're finding, a lot of companies, even with integrated data, can't really bring it always together across the business. And I think this is something that I think, larger scale of players need to really start to pay attention to, because I believe that's a big advantage you can have over anybody. And I think my personal frustration, and probably that of the industry, is actually nobody's doing it. No one's spending enough time, because you say a lot of time is spent with data integration. We've got all this data. What do we do with it? They try and backtrack what the insights are with it rather than see what it's actually telling. But I think if we can truly, gather those data insights, put them into action and play, I think the integrated provider is going to have a much bigger advantage by far.
Yes, sorry. My answer to that, and it's almost, I think you've got, again, it's for me kind of AI for AI's sake. Actually, the biggest advantage that a wholesale provider will have against the vertically integrated is actually down to the level of competition that you have in a geographic area. In reality, for a wholesale-only player to thrive, they need to have no competition. And this is what you see, for example, in the UK. So in the UK now, at the wholesale level, obviously you've got a national player called Openreach that covers basically every home. You've got Altnet like us or CityFibre that cover a portion of those homes, and you've got most likely a new infrastructure that is currently being a spin-off basically from Virgin Media to build also a wholesale layer. When you have that level of intensity in terms of competition, whether you've got AI or not, it's not going to solve the problem, because at the wholesale level, the differentiation of your product is so minimal that really it's on the strength of the commercial relationship that you have with large ISP. And in the UK, for example, arguably, there is no actually pure wholesale player. So Openreach has BT as an anchor tenant, Virgin Media and their NetCo has Virgin Media as an anchor tenant, and Netomnia has UFibre and Brisk as an anchor tenant. Whereas CityFibre is the one that has been actually struggling actually to get a lot of customers basically because they don't have an anchor tenant. They had to actually build basically strong relationship with Vodafone and TalkTalk, and in exchange for that, they had to sacrifice wholesale ARPU, which means that it makes the economics actually more difficult. But that's a difference in terms of business model there. And arguably, I think for me, I believe that a wholesale only works only when there is only one infrastructure. And you see that very successful in France. So in the municipality where they implemented wholesale, there is only one player and the company is very successful. Why? Because at the wholesale, there is no competition. If there is competition, I think you need to keep control of the monetization of your platform through basically having control of one of the anchor tenants, which is why we are doing it like that. And at that point, you have insight basically on both sides because you own basically both sides of the value chain. If you don't have competition, I will argue that the insight is not that useful at the wholesale level. Therefore, it doesn't matter. So that's more how it's not the same. Might not answer your question, but for me, I look at it more from a competition basically landscape.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, just a short comment from my side. So definitely integration can be an advantage, but the actual advantage comes from, are you able to move, even if you're not integrated, together fast when it matters. And as mentioned, you need to know what you want to be doing. And if then, I've seen in a lot of companies that data, for example, is not being shared freely. And there's more time spent on discussing with each other why or why not I should be sharing my data with you. So if you can remove these barriers, then it doesn't matter so much if you're already integrated or not, because you can move fast.
Thanks, everyone. Any more questions from the audience? Any more questions from the audience? Press that button, Neil.
Sorry, so the title is The Network Challenges of Implementing AI. I didn't really see many network challenges. I just so from a network point of view, or maybe I'm misunderstanding the word network, it's possible. It's kind of like so my question is where are you seeing networks actually use AI and what difference is it making?
Okay, Neil, thank you very much. Right, what difference is it making? I mean, Jeremy, perhaps we could start with you. Give us a concrete example of perhaps where we're seeing it now or very soon that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, so that's the point of networking AI. So currently for us, the only real use case that we've seen at the network level is really inside the home. So if you look from a network perspective, because being able to improve customer experience in the home by looking at Wi-Fi, looking at speed, looking at a handover between several basically access point or nodes that you've got inside the home to try to understand basically when there is a problem that you can be proactive rather than reactive is the only place so far where, from a network standpoint, where we found basically a use case. Because in reality, our network at the access level has so much capacity, and there is almost no options to do some rerouting that requires actually something more sophisticated, because there is only one path. So there was one path basically from a home to each exchange, and from each exchange after that, it goes into a core network where there's also plenty of capacity. So for us, the only place so far where we've seen a use, and obviously I've got a residential network. So as a residential network, it's a lot less sophisticated compared to potentially international enterprise type of network. And we try to keep it as simple as possible. But for us, the main challenge is in the home. And the main challenge that I've got there is telemetry. Actually extracting that data from CPEs is sometimes you can't even extract it. So for example, when we started working with the first CPE vendor that we used was EO. So EO was actually, it's kind of a black box, and they've got their own solution basically in the background. If you want to try to extract the data, there is no standard interfaces. If you want an interface, then you need to start paying for it. And I tell you, well, you don't need to do that. Don't worry, I'm going to do everything for you. And so you get into those things. So then you start moving to other CPE vendors, and then you try to see which protocol basically they've implemented, and you realize that everything is not really, it's push. Rather, you have to pull that data rather than actually receiving that data in a real-time fashion. So there is a lag usually when you look at that, and all those things. This is where the difficulty. I think most of the hardware that we've been working with has not been really giving us a real-time access to that data to be able to do that. But that's really for me the only place so far when I've seen a use case in a residential network.
And Jeremy, which is actually a very similar use case that I deploy in another life, but how are you using the AI though? Is it customer retention? Is it or is it, hey, everything's slow and you've got 1 gig to them, so it's not the network, it's the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So
how is this translating for the customer? Because that's what matters, right?
Yeah, and as I say, it's for us to be proactive rather than reactive, first of all. So we try to detect those issues basically early enough before actually the customer calls us.
Yeah.
And if the customer ends up calling us, then it gives us better diagnostic tool actually to understand the behavior, because now we can monitor actually the performance in the home to then be able to troubleshoot basically better. So those are the two things that we are doing. And but yeah, so the challenge is for me, I don't, at the network level, that so far I found only one use case rather than more.
and nothing at the construction level?
At the construction level, it's been a lot simpler than I thought, and because in reality, in the UK, because you have access to the infrastructure of OpenReach. So how we build our network, we use a product which is called PIS, so Physical Infrastructure Access, and therefore you get a duct map and lots of poles, and everything basically is organized almost like a tree. What is very interesting actually when you start using that data is you can use actually just a shortest path algorithm basically from a point, and they tend to all go back to a BT exchange. So if you start actually building your network with, I will start from the exchange and go to the home and understand where the cabinets of OpenReach are, you can actually reverse engineer actually the optimal path for 99% of the network. And at that point, it just becomes a simple tree that you can use to automate the network. So therefore, I couldn't find basically, again, a use case besides just a normal tree basically to automate our planning. Potentially, if we were to actually dig all the roads and to do something a lot more sophisticated, there might be a use case there. But for what we do, because we don't have to rebuild basically the duct network or poles or chambers, I found that a simple shortest path algorithm basically was good enough.
Thanks, Jeremy. Great insights. Any more comments on this one, or we get?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it from TM4's perspective. So I agree very much with Jeremy, and what he's just said there is what we're looking at. So at TM4, we just published a white paper which looked at 15 high-value scenarios. So when we talk about AI in the network, for us it's all about level 4, because that's where you're having autonomy, and that's where AI is actually doing what it's supposed to do, rather than just say using advanced analytics, for example. So for us, really, what we're working to now, we're working with Orange, we're working with Deutsche Telekom, and we're working with China Mobile to prove out some of these high-level, what we call value scenarios. And we've got 4 of those 15, which we're targeting actually for DTW in June to be able to showcase them actually working on live networks. And those 4 areas are around single-domain troubleshooting. It's around home broadband service assurance, just very much like Jeremy was talking about, private line service provisioning, and RAM optimization. And we think that those are the first 4 we're actually going to see live in operator networks using genuine AI to solve some of these challenges and problems. And look forward, hopefully, if we get it right, in our innovation lab, which we have based in India, where we do a lot of the innovation work in this space, being able to showcase on the show floor with real network data and the AI working in these areas.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to, it's June, isn't it?
June, yeah,
We look forward to getting some updates on that. Thanks very much. We've got to move on because I look at the time and we've got a few minutes left, and we've got a question at the back. I want to get a couple more questions in, if I can, please.
Very short one. This is for Jeremy, and I'm Anne from BT. But this question has nothing to do with you. Firstly, congratulations on the great competition you're giving. And well done, yeah.
Thank you.
The question is very general. You talk about 5 million by 2028, and now you're around 2 to 3 million. And so you have fresh cash, fresh money. And so your priority, we assume, would be deployment as early as you can to deploy more fiber. So how did you convince? So what was your aim and focus of bringing AI? Was it to get more fresh money quicker? Or
No, it's actually at heart I'm a technologist. So for me, I like technology. So for example, even it's nothing related to AI, but for example, I think 4 years ago when I started that company, I think I was one of the first one, for example, implementing a CGNAT function as a network function virtualization across the whole network, and we are still using that today. NAT for me cost me a fraction of most of the telco in the world, because I said, okay, let's just fully virtualize it. And the reason for AI is not actually that if you really want to raise capital nowadays, the buzzword is not AI, it's data centers in infrastructure. So if you want to raise capital, you just need to say that you do data centers, and usually you can raise a lot of capital. So fiber is actually a bad word, so currently. But no, AI for me is more at the network level. As I said, I found only one use case, but I do believe that I see within the company the amount of man hours that I see in trying to forecast and trying to look at data and to do all those things. It seems like for me, very much wasted time. I mean, the amount of time that I see people trying to forecast basically the future using a spreadsheet and some basic basically algorithm. It's like it's okay. You're just making your life very hard. So you should be able to do that better. And obviously, everybody has played with large language model and one day. My dream is actually that it writes the bot pack for myself, and that I get that. But no, it was not that. It's just I thought some of those problems can be solved with AI type of technology, and therefore we are trying to find actually new solutions to those problems using that technology. But as I say, I think there is still a big talent gap. I have a talent gap on that. So like most people, you try stuff, you try to understand how it works, but I'm no expert, and therefore the learning curve is quite steep, which is why maybe I need MULTIPLAI to help me. But
there you go. We can make an introduction for you. Don't worry. We'll sort that one out. We'll just take a 10% commission. Thanks, Jeremy. And you've heard it here first. Our next event is going to be called Data Centers and Infrastructure. So just bring your money in now, please. Cash only. I'm looking at the time. We are into a coffee break time. But is any quick question? Any quick question? Where? On my left, please.
I'm Glenn Rognan. I'm from Wind River. I used to be in a past life. I used to be an industry analyst. I think most of you remember me. I've listened all morning, and I don't think a lot of people brought up the big challenge about security. So in AI, everybody said, bring all the data together and stuff like that. But every single company, even if you think about people keep secrets, right? They copy. Everybody puts stuff into silos of all the data for different reasons. So there is this challenge, right? There's a utopia, bring all the data. So my question is, isn't that part of the challenge as well? The security or how people organize themselves or just how people work? Isn't that part of the big problem that AI can't figure out stuff because they don't have the data? Or to be honest, some of the Gen AI do really bad interpretations of stuff because they don't have all the information.
Good question. Thank you very much. Anybody want to take the question of data and security? You want to start? Aaron, do you want to start on the left?
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing, and we've got regulation popping up everywhere. We've got different jurisdictions. Even within the EU, we've got different countries, talking about where data can sit, how you can process it. We know within opcos where it can be centralized, where it's got to be within the different opcos and stay within those countries. And, and then you've got the security concerns with AI. How secure really is it? I think this is the challenge. And, back to even the investment question, what's the ROI on that? And for actually putting something to large data processing. So I think as an industry and people actually looking into AI, we do need to take a step back and say, actually, what is the future of data? What is the future of the data governance within our organization? How is that data even structured? That causes lots of security challenges as well. So I would say that's probably back to what this panel is. I think the data challenge is probably the number one question. And still in telco, the big problem is we don't have a single data model. You spend a lot of your time trying to translate the data to try and make it make sense. TM4, we have the SID, which we've had for a long time, but even people have different implementations of the SID because exactly for your reason, people have different interpretations. They want to use it slightly different. You can go into any operator and they say, the TM4 compliant with the SID, which for people who don't know is our data, which is our data model. And then people say, but for us, we just had to do it that way slightly, or for our department, we just had to do this. One of the biggest challenges we have, so it's people, how they use the data, but also the regulation of how it's being processed. Unless we, as an industry, take that seriously, I think we're going to be miles behind other industries which just forge ahead and have proper data processing.
Thanks, Aaron. Rebecca?
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, I think it's not only data security, it's also now AI security. How can we ensure that our models are secure? It's not only the data part. And yes, it comes much more down to the human in the mix. It's mostly the human putting in the USB stick into a computer that's causing the security issues, right? But yeah, and overall, what I'm seeing now is that security is becoming more and more important, especially for telcos. But the AI model security is also very prevalent. And here's also where the EU Act is coming in, which is on the one hand an overburden for a lot of people, but also gives a lot of guardrails on how to handle these challenges.
Thanks, Rebecca and Jeremy. Do you want to conclude our panel for us?
Yeah, no problem. And to answer that question is, so as I mentioned at the beginning, is for us one of the biggest issue that we have as a telecom operator is the amount of data from customers that we handle and GDPR related issue. And at the moment, naively, how I'm solving the problem is I have a very limited amount of people who have the ability to extract and load or transform that data inside basically our lake to kind of make sure that none of that data actually makes it into any basically data sources that we use for modeling. And that's but that's a quite naive way to handle it. But so far that's how we do it. I think to conclude is at the network side is for me, I haven't found that many use cases so far, but as managing your organization better, I think there are a lot of use cases to use AI, but I think we are still very much incompetent, I think, including myself.
Well, let's come back in 12 months' time and just see what progress we've made here, because we're not incompetent. We've got tons of ideas. We just got to implement them.
I am incompetent. So.
Nah. I'm incompetent because we are 7 minutes over the designated time of this panel. That's a shocker, which means you only get 20 minutes coffee break. Apologies for that, but it's 20 minutes coffee break outside. We'll be back in about 20 minutes' time for the final session of the day. Thank you very much. Round of applause.